you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. And now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Yeah, there's your host in the dark. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am your host, Rich Barris. Thank you, Don, as always, for that opening. All right, got a little bit of a shortened show today, 15 minutes cut off. So there's a lot to get to, and I'm just going to get right into it. We're going to talk. Yeah, he's ready to rock and roll, right? Okay. Cool. Just give me that. Just make sure. We got Joe Kent here today. I'm glad he came back to talk about what's going on in the future, what he thinks is happening with Congress. Speaking of which, before we even go forward, I want to show you something, and I'll get Joe's opinion on this as well. But this was, what, almost a day ago now, or it was yesterday. It was yesterday. There was a bill on the House floor that would have put an end to the COVID lockdowns. And as I was doing some research, to prep for the interview with Joe Kent, I'm thinking to myself, a couple of things we could talk about. And really with this election, I think this past election, a lot of people didn't take enough, or Republicans nationally didn't talk about enough, was the lockdown and what had happened during the lockdown. And I think when you look back in 2021, the success Republicans had in almost New Jersey and in Virginia, I think some of that got away from the national message. Leadership just didn't want to pick up the mantle and run with it. But now there was a bill on the floor yesterday that would have ended the ended the emergency, ended the lockdown, call for an end to mandates, et cetera, et cetera. And this is the vote tally. This is the vote tally. Not a single Democrat, not one Democrat voted yes. And then it's true that not one Republican voted no, but, four did, four were not, voting. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable that we are here where we are now. I don't want to get into it with the Project Veritas stuff, but all this stuff comes to light. They've been wrong on everything. And all this time later, you can't get a single Democrat to say, you know what, I was wrong. So this takes up our mantle of what we've been talking about lately, which is generally why people can't admit they were wrong when they were wrong, right? No matter what you do. We're going to talk about the Hamilton 68 scandal too, the Russian bot stuff. I think I was on that list. I believe in the beginning, I was actually on that list. It's incredible. And here we are. But you know what? If he's ready to rock and roll, I'm just going to bring him in now. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for being here, Joe. Joe Kent, how you doing, brother?
Great to be back. Doing well.
Yeah. So, the first thing I want to ask you, Joe, is I know you got no quit in you. You wouldn't have done what you did in the Army if you had quit in you. You just can't get through that kind of thing if you're a quitter. But why are you doing this again? People would say, that's because it's not fun. I think people don't understand that. Like being a candidate, running, and then even serving when you get there, it's not fun. So, what's the motive? What's the motivation, Joe?
Big thing. This is the reason why I got into this in the first place. I really don't feel like I have a choice. Served my country for my entire adult life, and I feel like this is a continuation. And if our country wasn't in crisis right now, if this was just politics of the 1990s, Republicans versus Democrats, debating different policy aspects, then I wouldn't even bother. But right now, our country is absolutely being destroyed. You just talked about the vote. Every single Democrat voted to keep this blanket of government tyranny over the country, I guess, until Biden says it's over. I guess that was their big power play there. But that just shows you the stakes right now. And there's so many different directions that we can go. But on every single front, our country's under assault. So, yeah, the last election didn't go the way it was supposed to go for me. It didn't go the way I wanted it to. But that's no reason to quit. We only lost by 2,600 votes. So for me, I just figured the best thing to do is just to keep fighting.
Yeah, we really was a coin toss there on your race. We just had to wait, for the votes to come. It was really close. And everyone has their opinions. And this is what I do, for a living. I got my own. I have to be honest, I want to give leadership the benefit of the doubt in the House. But, I'm a forgive but not forget kind of guy. And I just won't forget some of the things that I saw them do to candidates like you, by the way, which I'm going to put up. I'd like to get your opinion on why, and because it wasn't just you. Let's face it. I mean, Joe, this was an election that Republicans should have ran away with. Historically speaking, we now have two ahistorical election cycles that don't make sense with modern American history. What are your opinion? What's your opinion? What went wrong for some of the candidates out there? I mean, it wasn't just your race. It's a lot of races.
Yeah, I mean, I think my race is probably a good microcosm to look at. I went up in the primary against one of the impeachment voters. And so we had the Republican establishment very clandestinely, until we called them out, clandestinely propping up the impeachment voter, because at the time, Trump, it remains very, very popular. The MAGA movement remains very, very popular. That's what polling indicated. And so the establishment was very quiet about funneling millions and millions of dollars to my opponent. And then we have a jungle primary out here. So it kind of made sense for the establishment to also prop up some other candidates in order to take away from my numbers. So we had a very bloody, hard-fought primary. I had at least $10 million spent against me. We raised, about $2.5 million all in individual contributions, but we arrived in the general as a victor, except for with zero money. And so then we went to the National Republican Congressional Committee and the RNC and said, hey, look, I'm the nominee now and we need some help. And they basically said, well, yeah, but it's a Republican seat, so you already go ahead and measure the drapes in your new congressional office, was more or less the messaging that we got, even though we identified, we said, hey, these midterms are really hard for Republicans because we have a lot of low propensity Republicans who don't turn out unless it is a presidential year. We have these people identified. We just need the resources to reach out and touch them. And again, for a wide variety of reasons, Matt Brainerd's gone into details. He was my GC. We even said, hey, we need help getting to these people. We need some field organizers. And they basically said they couldn't help us because we weren't using the vendors that they approved. So kind of like a catch-22 bunch of nonsense. So that's really one of the biggest reasons why things just didn't work out. We also have a late primary too. Our primary wasn't done until mid-August. We start mailing the ballots out by mid-October. So it was really hard to heal a lot of the, I think the hurt feelings that just naturally happen in a hard-fought primary.
Yeah, I want to tell people more about that too, because what you just said, a lot of my viewers are going to recognize what you just said. So with some of the people that we worked with to get through the primary, what he means by not using the vendors, folks, so if Joe has a team and he's got a pollster and he's got a GC and he's got a campaign manager and he's got somebody who does ads for him, whatever it may be, when you win the primary, Republican leaders won't help you unless you fire your team and get the people that they use. So that happened to me with a bunch of people. Here's the kicker. They really didn't help them anyway, Joe. They didn't help them anyway, especially if they were MAGA. They kind of wanted an excuse to stay away. And these people, I mean, well, some won, but the ones that were in critical seats, in fact, lost. And lost by margins nobody expected they would lose by. I mean, these were very, very close districts. Here, you also had people in your race, and nobody ever wants to be, they don't want to be able to connect the dots right back to them. But you had a lot of outside groups do things like this. I'm going to put it on the screen. This is a mailer that somebody who wanted the establishment candidate connected to Herrera Butler. This is what they sent out to people, Republicans in Joe's district. So if you have, Joe, 10% maybe, that's like this moderate. I'm not sure if I'm MAGA. I've always voted Republican, but I don't know. And they get these mailers showing now the new Republican nominee, Joe Kent, next to Hitler and Bernie Sanders. They act like this stuff didn't hurt. And the Monday quarterbacking, whatever it is, that everyone wants to blame Trump. Everyone's got some excuse that's ridiculous, and they pretend like that kind of thing doesn't hurt. It hurt Dana Rohrabacher in 2018 when they did it to him. They put him next to Trump as a Russian asset. All this nonsense crap, and there were about 10, to 12% of Republican women in that district. We just couldn't convince the guy was not a Russian asset. No matter what. And they pretended as if, something he did caused him to lose that race. They told us point blank that they believe that Rohrabacher may be, in league with Trump and the Russians, even though they've been loyal Republican voters for years. It's just crazy. You can't do, there's something Republican leaders going to have to take a look at, man, going forward and say, because I really don't, it was your race was close, but you were clearly not an underdog in the primary. You had all of the energy. So they should have looked at that and said, all right, if she loses, we have to prepare for the inevitability that she's going to lose, and we can't damage our candidate. This is so stupid. It's just so dumb. So, going forward, Joe, what if there's something this time you think you're going to do different, or what, is that something you put thought to? I'm curious, is there something you're thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. So really unifying the Republican Party, I think, is key. My Democrat opponent in the general, she basically ran as a moderate Republican. However, now if you look at her voting record, she's got about a month worth of votes. She's anything but a moderate. From the Born Alive issue of depriving a baby that survives an abortion of care, she voted against that. Just absolute insane things. She voted to preserve the 87,000 IRS agents. So we're going to be doing a lot of contrasting. Now my Democrat opponent can't hide behind just messaging. She actually has a real record that she's going to have to defend. And I think for those Republicans who, for whatever reason, they maybe believe some of the mailers, the $10 million spent against me, and did not vote for me, I think they're going to come back over to our side, whether it's the life issue or whether it's just, basic pocketbook issues, because the Democrats are continuing this cycle of inflation. So that's something big that we're going to do, but we're also really working hard to reach out to you. Look, the incumbent that I beat, she was a 12-year incumbent. There was people who really, really liked her, and it was a hard fought primary. So I'm doing everything I can to reach out to some of those folks. And then the low propensity Republicans, that's another huge thing. There's a lot of people out there, and I talk to them all the time because I knocked on tons of doors, did tons of town halls. And I still have people coming up to me today that are like, hey, did you have your election? So, we live in politics. We understand the political cycles, but there's a lot of Americans out there who, if we get a ballot in front of them, they will vote Republican, but they're not really paying attention unless it's a presidential year. So we're doing a lot of get out the vote. Ballot harvesting is 100% legal in the state of Washington. Republicans here, none of us want to do it. We want all of our people to come out and vote on game day. And, that was part of my campaign that got me through the primary. And I do think that was a mistake. So we're looking at ballot harvesting in churches, getting our religious community engaged, getting the 2A community engaged. And then when the ballots get mailed out, we vote for like 3 weeks here in Washington state. Then it takes us another month to count them. But that's a different story. But right when the voting period starts out, we want to be able to have our activists out there getting ballots in front of Republican voters at churches, at gun stores, sporting events, those types of things.
I love that you evolve, man. I really do. I do, because I think that the game day thing, which people, they heard me, they know. It just, to me, logistically, it's very difficult to expect your voters to do something in 8-10 hours, Joe? That your opponents have been doing for weeks. So, right. It's a logistic nightmare. But yeah, somebody had asked, and this is, I'm going to pivot back to the viewer's question, but I'll come back to it. But somebody asked if you anticipated that kind of establishment fight again this time. Will they throw Butler back in there? Right now, it's been crickets from a lot of these defeated incumbents. But, do you expect that? Because I think you're dead on immediately unifying the Republican base, the Republican vote. There were people in these districts, same thing with Peter Meyer, I would say, in Michigan 3. There were people who did like him. He couldn't get a majority in the primary, but it was hard to bring some of his people back come November. Yeah. So, if he did want to run again, he may present a problem again. So do you expect that that she would jump back in the race, or some, maybe there would be less resistance to you this time?
I'm not sure if Jamie Herrera Butler in particular will jump back in. She's been fairly quiet. That's kind of her style. The thing is, though, like, look, a guy like me who came from having no name recognition whatsoever, who ran a grassroots campaign, I should have been easy fodder for the establishment if the establishment's calculus was correct. Their calculus was that, hey, this MAGA Trump thing, it's really just based on Trump, and it's going to kind of just go away. And what my campaign and many other campaigns across the country, what we really proved is that the majority of the grassroots, like, we are very, very America first. We're populists. We are traditional American values. That's kind of where the party is at right now. And I think the Republican establishment realizes that. I only lost by less than a percentage point. So I've had some really good discussions with leadership in the Republican Party. And so I think we're going to have a much more, unified effort right now to go after our main enemy. Like, we've seen time and time again that we can have these brutal primaries and absolutely destroy each other. And at the end of the day, who benefits? I mean, the Democrats do. Like, my former background as a special forces guy, it's like, hey, if your enemy's destroying each other, you just kind of hang out and figure out when they're done beating the crap out of each other, and then you go take out the guy who's the weakest. I mean, that's exactly what that's what we've handed the Democrats on a silver platter. So it will be unfortunate if we choose to go down that road again in 24. But I'm optimistic just based on the way things are heading right now.
Yeah, I want to ask you about leadership and how you think the Republican slight Republican majority is doing. But you said it before, this election would be different. I have a friend, this guy who now he lives in Utah, but he was a long time political guy in your area, and the 3rd and 4th districts were always, his slice of the pie. And he basically always told me, that your district, the 4th district, there are a ton of these like blue collar Democrats that are just ready to vote Republican at this, but it's always a slog to get them there. And then in midterms, they just kind of poof and disappear, and in presidential elections, they'll be back. So, he actually told me, he said, if Joe Kent was running in 24, and this is before you announced, he said, if Joe Kent was running in 24, this would be a different race. He's like, because there are just these kind of, I don't want to call them Trumplicans, because according to him, that they were there even before Trump. On a federal level, you could get them to vote Republican if it was a certain cycle, a presidential cycle or a high interest cycle. But they're tough. There's, like you said, we live in the political world. These are the people who don't, and they're just trying to go, get along and live their lives. It's so difficult to get them out there. We just did a national voter analysis, and people, every year we do this, people are shocked how many folks are actually out there, and they're profiled absolutely more Republican than Democrat, and they just don't vote. They just don't, Joe. I mean, there's so many of them out there. So, people always ask me when they feel like defeatist, I always try to point that out, that in fact, people aren't as engaged as they could be, number one. And if they were, I really don't think Democrats would have a chance in a lot of these areas that right now they win by default. Just like that's, I don't know how else to put it. But let me
I like to say about the district here is that Democrats are not the majority of my district, of the 3rd district, but the Democrats, credit where credit's due, they did a great job of bringing out the majority of their voters, where we failed to bring out the majority of our voters. So if we're able to bring out the majority of our voters, and so much that I think is going to come down to ballot harvesting, can we get ballots in front of people who we know are going to hit the R box every single time? Like, it's going to come down to mechanics. Whereas I think we in the past haven't been focused on mechanics. We've been focused on, hey, I'm the candidate, I'm going to tell you my policies, and I hope I can earn your vote. Gosh darn it. Where the Democrats are out there, they're chasing ballots, they're hustling. I mean, that's just that is the game.
Yeah, Republicans are still playing a game of persuasion, right? I mean, I'm trying to earn your vote, whereas they were able to just squeeze more blood from the stone, man. That's it. They were able to, put it on the ground, get it on the ground. I've been reviewing all these races that, really were a bit of shockers, and that's the common theme. It's like they would run these ads to provide cover for, that as if they're running a normal campaign. But beneath the surface, that's not what they were spending their money on. We pay walkers, on the Republican side of the coin, I've seen walkers get paid, 10 to 15 bucks an hour or something like that by whatever firm they hire. Democrats are spending $45, $40 an hour. I mean, it was smart. It was brilliant. Just developing apps, Joe. People need an extra $500 a week. And they said and people signed up and weren't even Democrats. They just wanted the money. And they were running around, gathering whatever it needed to be, whether it was signatures or getting ballots if you could harvest in that area, or just simply going to the door and trying to nudge people to fill in their mail-in vote and get it in. And it wasn't even political. One of the girls in training had asked, she was, well, can we get Republican ballots too? And the guy is like, well, no, we're just. She wasn't political at all. She was just a single mother who needed to make an extra $500 a week. That's it.
Yeah. Smart.
It was brilliant stuff. So I love that you're evolving into that and you see that. Unfortunately, I'm not hearing that from as many people moving forward. But how do you think? I always, I'd like to get your opinion on this because I always tell people, never, I like what I see right now, but give them time. I typically tell people when it comes to politicians, how do you think Leader McCarthy is doing, or Speaker McCarthy now? How do you think he's doing? From people who are critics like us, critic standpoint, how do you think he's doing? He's performing.
I think he's doing great, honestly. I mean, if he keeps this up right now, I will have no problems, supporting him. I think everything he's doing right now, he should be heavily commended on. He's not taking the easy way out. He's not playing go along to get along. I mean, he's putting real fighters on all these committees. These committees seem to be geared towards doing things that are very, very, very essential right now, going after COVID, going after the weaponization of government. I mean, so I'm very happy with what I'm seeing right now. I was really happy with the process too that played out. I know a lot of people don't like the way that the speaker vote went down, but I think the transparency and how much the American people got to kind of see behind the scenes, I think that's a very, very good thing. Even though some of it, there were some heated moments, there were some fights and whatnot. But I think that's a good thing. We had Republicans that were saying, hey, I'm not okay with the status quo. I don't think any of it was personal. They had a set of things that they wanted. They wanted these rules for a balanced budget, for the ability for individual members to present amendments. They wanted an end to this omnibus nonsense. And then also the motion to vacate. So at the end of the day, for people who are like, hey, I don't trust McCarthy, good. Don't trust any of them. We have a mechanism right now where we can actually remove him as the Speaker of the House. And at the end of the day, Kevin McCarthy agreed to that. McCarthy's been in Washington, D.C. for long enough that if he wanted to, he could have. I think he should be commended because he tolerated this massive fight within the Republican Party that could have cost him the speakership. He could have crossed the aisle and gotten a bunch of moderate Democrats and just said, hey, I'm not going to listen to these Freedom Caucus guys anymore. But he didn't do that. And so I think all sides right now of the aisle, as far as the Republicans go, the McCarthy wing, the more establishment guys, and then MAGA, I think we should be really happy right now and focus on working together and continuing to be victorious all the way into 2024.
And the committee assignments, Joe. I mean, the people he allowed. Dan Crenshaw did not get Homeland Security. So you have to point out credit. You have to give credit where credit is due. Absolutely. And I remember that he could have tried to get Democrats, moderate Democrats. It was a Thursday. I remember when they were telling him to do it, and he didn't. So you know what he did? He picked up the phone and called Donald Trump. And that's what he did. And he's like, look, I need you to nudge these guys a little bit. I need some help because I don't want to do that. I don't want to go that direction. I want to make everyone happy. I want to be productive and move forward. And I got to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised. I got some friends he reached out to and he told them, if I screw you here, there's no other way to put it because they're critics and they're putting their reputation on the line. He said, if I do, bury me. I don't know what to tell you. I'll hold my feet to the fire. So that's not often that happens. And by the way, somebody asked, I imagine, Joe, if somebody wanted to support you, they could just write a check, right? So like if somebody wanted to support you outside of WinRed, there's a couple of people asking that. What do you tell them? JoeKentForCongress.com, our online donation system. I think it's ran through Anodot, and so it doesn't have all the bad baggage of WinRed. But if you want to make sure that we get all the money that you are willing to give to us, you can write a check. There's also a P.O. box address at the bottom of the webpage there, and you can mail us a check the old-fashioned way. If you're worried about anybody skimming money off the top, writing a check directly to the candidates is the way to go. Yeah, I think there's a lot of anger out there too. That there's still anger over betraying some of these candidates. As a candidate, you have a right to have the people around you that you want, and you feel comfortable with, that are loyal to you, so you're loyal back. And those kinds of demands, and then what I don't even know what else to call it, the intentional sabotage that I saw, I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, outside of, I remember, and Laura remembers this too. I remember, 13 years plus ago, I remember when Karl Rove sabotaged Joe Miller, but never did I see it. There's always these individual examples, but never did I see what looked to be an effort by the NRSC and the NRCC to kind of just leave people out to dry. I've never seen that before. I think they thought, I really do believe this, Joe, I think they thought they had seats to spare, and that they didn't want to end up like John Boehner, with this big caucus of unruly Freedom Caucus people and Tea Party people, whatever, giving them, being a constant thorn in their side. But hopefully it does at least look like it. Maybe they learn their lesson there. I don't know. But I got to get your opinion on Eastern Europe before, because you have unique insight into this, and I got to ask your thoughts about this. The M1 Abrams now, Joe. What the hell are we doing? Just go, give me your thoughts.
I mean, number one, like, we have a crisis here in America. Our southern border is under attack. So I don't know why we need to be in the business of going to find a new war to participate in. But everything that's happened in Ukraine since Russia decided to invade has just been absolute insanity, escalation after escalation. Now, this backstory there goes, very much into depth. I mean, Putin never should have invaded Ukraine and started killing Ukrainians. We can all agree that that's bad. But ever since that happened, we have just thrown caution to the wind, whether it was our sanctions package or whether it was just constant escalation. Our rhetoric, I think, has been inexcusable. Biden saying that Putin can't remain in power, all this regime change rhetoric. And then anybody who asks questions, we are immediately labeled as, Putin sympathizers, whatnot. This most recent escalation of Abrams tanks. I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is just another grift by the military industrial complex, because look, these Abrams tanks are they're very impressive machines, but they're also very complicated. And so you say it's 31, 32 Abrams tanks. The logistical tail behind all of that is massive. So if we're not just giving them to the Ukrainians in some sort of a symbolic gesture, which it sounds like that's not what we're trying to do, then there's going to be a massive package. And I frankly don't see how that massive package doesn't involve at least American contractors. And so then the obvious question is going to look, these tanks are going to be a priority target for Putin, and Putin doesn't care. This is how the Russians fight. They lob artillery, mortars, and rockets at a piece of ground until it's pulverized enough to send in wave after wave of convicts, mercenaries, and conscripts, and they don't really care how many they lose. So this amount of savagery that the Russians are willing to throw at the problem, I just don't see how we continue to sustain this. So we're going to have U.S. boots on the ground there in some capacity, is my assessment. Zelensky's pretty smart, actually, as much as I dislike the guy. He the second we said we were going to give him tanks, he immediately came back with the obvious one is, well, hey, I need aircraft. I need F-16. I need air cover. Because really, if you're just going to put tanks out in the open, especially against an adversary like Russia, who is just using a barrage of artillery and rocket fire, then they're kind of just sitting ducks. So you do need air cover. And so this is just more escalation. And if you think the logistical trail for Abrams tanks is bad, wait till you see the F-16s. And then at what point, too, this is the biggest issue, I think. At what point does Putin just say, hey, NATO's at war with me, so I'm going to start doing some strikes against these guys? And then we're in World War III. I mean, we fought the entire Cold War on an economic scale through diplomacy. And anytime any of the little proxy wars got close to our border or got close to Russia's border, calmer people on the Russian side and the American side, Republicans and Democrats, backed off and said, what do we need to do to de-escalate? And we are doing nothing right now to de-escalate this situation. So people in the Pentagon saying that they have some idea on how this is all going to play out, they are lying 100%. We are in the valley of unintended consequences right now. So I think this is a very pressing issue. Congress hasn't voted on this whatsoever. We're going against the Constitution. This has, like, at the end of the day, the American people should be asking, hey, what is in this for us? What is our vital national security interest? What are we risking World War III for? And none of that's been explained to the American people.
Yeah, You just nailed it. Well, what you said, that's my concern. So once you're moving now from lethal aid and weapons, right? Stingers or sending them stingers or something like that, it's totally different. The javelin, totally different. Once you move into, M1, Abrams or any kind of, tank, which are not trained to deal with, right? So you're going to need advisors now to teach them how to operate that, right? And teach them maneuvers that they don't know. And then he jumps on it with, well, I need this, I need air support, which again, he's right. At what point? I mean, you nailed it. At what point does Putin just say, look, this is a war? You may not have said it out loud, but you've obviously declared war on me. So this is a war. We're now in a war. I'm just going to go ahead and recognize it for what it is, because I'm going to be more honest with my people than you are. And then we're going to look so stupid, Joe. I mean, this is, and I'm not sure we're capable. And I never like speaking bad about, it's always a line for me, but I don't feel we're prepared to deal with this, Joe. All right.
No, we're not. And the thing that what we've proven in the last 20 years, number one, is that like our ruling class in the military industrial complex, they have no problem lying to the American people and getting us into quagmire. So that should be like kind of where we start. But also, like, we've proven our military has proven that we can be like we can be geniuses tactically. Like, we can invade countries, we can topple dictators, we can have 12 guys on horseback, go into Afghanistan with some air cover. Like, we can do all these really impressive tactical things. And so now you have the Pentagon saying we're going to move to maneuver warfare and liberate Crimea. Like, okay, even let's just say that we can make that happen, which I'm skeptical of because of the logistical trail and all that. Even if we made something like that happen, at the end of the day, us being able to hold all of this together on the other side of the world, just look back at the last 20 years. We haven't been able to hold these castles of sand, this house of cards, whatever you want to call it, together for any sustainable period of time. At the end of the day, Russia and Ukraine share a border. They've been fighting over that border longer than America has been a country. And so for us to think that we're going to somehow solve that, we're going to get rid of Putin, all of it is just insane talk. And again, like, explain to the American people, like, what is it worth risking World War III for? And that right there is the question that none of them will answer. None of the war hawks will answer that question.
You worry that just these actions may, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you have China over there, you have Xi Jinping looking over and saying, what is NATO willing to do here? Measuring us up, seeing, where we stand. It's the smart play for them to sit back and, just like, bloodlet us, it's a smart, it's just watch us bleed out. What impact do you think, we don't know where it's going, so I know it's hard to answer this question, specifically, but what impact everything that's gone already and the decisions we've made already, what impact do you think that has on other countries, China and India? What do you think they're thinking right now watching NATO do this? Like you said, they share a border. This is not something that any other nation state doesn't understand, like why Putin's upset. Right. They understand it. They know. So, how do you think that impacts their thinking?
Yeah, I think people see that America, number one, we're weak at home. Biden got in day one, killed off the Excel pipeline. He stopped our ability to produce our own energy. Then when you know it, Putin's got enough money in the bank for him to go take care of his borders. And so they see that we're weak at home, but then they also see that we're willing to extend into these very dumb fights. And then from there, I think a lot of cultures kind of go to conspiracy. Like, what does America want? Are they trying to be imperialistic? Are they trying to control the world? Is this part of some form of, global government with NATO and the EU? And I think some of their minds go there, but they also, all of our adversaries, they see us as being very, very weak. There's obviously the question of China and Taiwan, but there's also the issue of our currency. We threw the kitchen sink of sanctions at Russia. We kicked them off SWIFT and said, you guys can't play here anymore. But we did it at a time when we made our own country very weak first. And so when we threw that sanctions package, I really think we threw down our hand, and we really displayed a very weak hand because Russia has been able to really recover. Russia is not going through a lot of the economic woes that the rest of the world that's been cut off from Russia, oil and gas, has, mainly because the Chinese Communist Party came in and said, hey, we'll underwrite a lot of this. And now this gave China the perfect opportunity to go to all these other major players, to go to India, to go to Brazil, the BRICS, and just say, hey, look, the US dollar, that's a thing of the past. Look at these guys. They don't produce their own energy. They don't have an industrial base. They rely on all of us to buy up their debt bonds. They're continuing to print more money. Maybe we should start moving towards the yuan. And we just had the Saudis recently say, basically, they don't have any confidence in the petrodollar. That's been the argument for all the modern monetary theory people who've just said we can continue to print money. Because like, hey, if you want to buy petro, you got to do it in the US dollar. Well, boy, the Saudis just kind of smacked us in the face. And look, I'm no fan of the Saudis. I really think it's kind of a terrorist regime. However, pragmatically, the Saudis were like, yeah, I don't have confidence in the dollar. Sure, we'd be more than willing to take a look at gold. We'd be more than willing to take a look at yuan. And that, to me, I think is the biggest thing. Because if we start to have our status as a prime reserve currency holder eroded away, China is going to get everything they want without firing a shot, without sailing their navy, across the Straits of Taiwan. So it's very, very dangerous. Like when America is weak at home, the rest of the world becomes very dangerous very quickly.
It destabilizes everything. But that's exactly how we've been allowed to get away with spending money we don't have and having in this historically nobody's not in modern history anyway has any so-called great power ever been this indebted to other nations. And it's the petrodollar. So without that, then there's nothing. I think people don't understand how quickly all of this could unravel. If that system, we rely on a global economic order. And if that is threatened or changed, the status quo is altered, then this could all destabilize very, very quickly. So the last thing I just want to throw at you, because you are a military guy. This was making rounds on social media and people were just hitting me up with this. You should see this letter from this admiral, from this general about prepping for war with China in 2 years. Isn't that not their job? Is this it's not really a big deal, Joe, right? I mean, this is what they do with their free time.
Yeah, I mean, we're supposed to kind of say, hey, we're preparing for war. That's a good thing. We want our military to prepare for war. Some of the phrases that he used, I was kind of surprised that like whoever his public affairs guy didn't kind of edit those up a little bit more. I mean, he's talking about the inevitability of us being at war with China, which I think is a little bit reckless for a general to say, like the Pentagon, hey, prepare for war. And then when the president and the Congress tells us to, then we go to war. I think it'd be much more measured, but it did seem like his speech just kind of got, a little bit out of hand. And then somebody decided to put it into some form of a memo, which is still kind of, again, why are we saber rattling all over the world right now? We're not in the greatest position. Maybe we should worry about strengthening ourselves first before we worry about all these other conflicts to get into.
Yeah, I lied. That's not the last thing I'm going to ask. I got to ask about the border because of somehow how these elections shook out. Then we're in a different position, I think, than many people expected to be able to tackle this issue. Certain people didn't win in Arizona, or at least, it is what it is. I'll just leave it there. But now we have a tiny, tiny Republican majority we see. And I do know that Kevin McCarthy has really promised people that he would tackle this. That's really the only tool Republicans could use to solve this problem. What would you do if you were there? I mean, how far that you could pull on the purse strings at this point, but are we not, kind of at the mercy of divided government, for at least 2 years to solve this issue?
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, there's a limited amount that Congress can do, especially with the last Congress and Senate approving the budget. This Congress doesn't have the typical power of the purse string until the next fiscal year. But look, I would start playing that hardball right now. I mean, I would say all these different foreign aid packages, especially when it comes to Ukraine, we're not even going to touch any of that until our border is secure, until we get troops deployed down there, until we start taking aggressive actions against the Mexican drug cartels. Look, I mean, I usually am known as being a restrained guy and advocating for us not to go get in wars. But look, if the military industrial complex wants a war, the Mexican drug cartel's fentanyl is killing something like 300 Americans every single day. So it's just negligent, I think, right now for anyone in federal government, honestly, to really talk about much else. I mean, state government can handle the vast majority of the day-to-day functions that people rely on. Federal government, at the end of the day, their job is to protect our country. And we have a wide open southern border. And look, the Democrats at this point, it's obvious. It should be obvious to everybody that Biden and the Democrats, they're not just negligent; they're complicit in this. I mean, Biden said the border's open. We've had I think 1.5 million people enter our country illegally. The fentanyl is absolutely out of control. And then you have states like Washington State, where Jay Inslee, our Democrat governor, the whole state is a sanctuary state. So we've welcomed this. The Democrats at the local level have basically decriminalized drugs. They've tied our police's hands behind their backs, and so we have open borders at the federal level and then open prisons at the state level. So we have to restore law and order. I'd be using every means necessary to get that border secured, and then to get the military down there, and then target the Mexican drug cartels.
Yeah, I'm a little bit stunned for people who, especially people who aren't, maybe dealing with a family member that is struggling with something like fentanyl. But one of the organizations that we work with, the entire family is one of this. I'm not going to get into specifics. The entire family's addicted to fentanyl that they're trying to help. And I honestly was a little bit surprised how easy in this area, which is not an urban area, where you think it'd be easy to go out and find heroin or something like that. It's not. I mean, we're talking about a white suburb, and how easy it is for that family to find a daily supply to feed their addiction. And this is cartel fentanyl. This is not pharmaceutical grade, made by Purdue Pharma or any of the other. That's not what this is. This is sophisticated, but it's still manufactured by the cartel. And Joe, it's like going out and finding a bag of marijuana to smoke. This is way worse than I thought. I mean, I know we had this fentanyl issue. I just didn't realize that it has become so easily obtainable, whereas maybe 10 years ago it was a designer drug that wasn't. This is a problem. This is a serious problem. It strikes right at the heart of the family unit, so it's a cancer, man. It's a cancer on society. There's no other way to put it. And they are complicit because, they turn their backs, at the very least, they turn their backs and while this happened, and, for political gain, whatever it may be, because they want somebody to, fold their laundry, cut their lawn, or do whatever. I mean, that's what they did. They sold out middle America for votes and, that kind of an economic benefit to them. It's gross. It's gross. And meanwhile, again, instead of, Abrams tanks, maybe we should be, spending money on something that deals with this problem, at the heart of it. Yes. But also once, the problem festers in society and you have this rampant problem with not just addiction, but we have so many other social issues, it would be a better thing to spend our money on, is what I guess what I'm saying here.
100%.
But as always, man, thanks for coming by. I hope you come back soon. Tell people where they can, find you, support you, go from there.
Yeah, great to be here, man. Thanks for having me on. JoeKentForCongress.com. We got a link to our donation page on there. There's links to all my social media. So JoeKentForCongress.com. Anything that people can give, greatly appreciated. We're trying to build up a really big war chest right now so that we can make it very clear that I'm the only person on the Republican side, so we can not have a hard-fought primary. So JoeKentForCongress.com is the place to make a donation.
Yeah, it was smart that you announced early and just took off to the races. Scare people out, raise the money, scare people out. This way you can focus on the actual opponent, which is the Democrat, and go from there. Well, thanks again, Joe, man. Come back soon. We love having you here, and I hope to see you back.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
All right. All the best.
Take care.
All right, Joe Kent, everyone. That was smart. Getting started and off to the races, because there's some legal stuff. You can't start raising money until you're actually declared. And the best thing for him to have done was declared early so he could start raising money and get off to a great start. So I gotta be honest. I'm really, it's not fun running for Congress. We're fortunate that we have people who are willing to go through this. Not only time and time again, but there's no quitting, Joe Kent. There's just not. And right? Yeah, amen. There's no quit. And I sometimes wonder if we deserve these civil servants or these servants, that have stood up. I mean, if there's anything, even if you don't like Donald Trump, right? One thing that he sparked, which I think the country is the better for, is this wave of new people who are willing to step forward, and we're getting out of the we're trying to get out of the career politician phase of our country that has been going on for so long. All right, definitely since, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, but definitely since the 16th and the 17th Amendments were passed and ratified in the worst log rolling deal in the history of the country. Yeah, and Laura just put it out. She's totally right. Joe Kent is as authentic as it comes. He really is. And thank you for reminding me to put my thing on silent, Laura. But he really is as authentic as it comes. Yeah. And since the 16th and 17th Amendments, we went from being that part-time, I'm going to surf for a little bit, but then I'm going to go back to my law practice. I'm going to go back to the farm, or I'm going to go back to my store, or whatever it is that they did. That ended quickly with the 16th and 17th Amendment. America is, in fact, trying to return to the way things were, and So hope Joe comes back so we can follow up on keep our eye on him as we move forward. It's funny, a year and a half, it'll go by real quick. You wait. And that's we should take a look at his district in detail and the voter file. Maybe we'll do I just decided I'm going to do it. I want to show you the difference in what Joe and I were talking about when it came to a midterm turnout and then a presidential turnout. And while it was a Republican district, the 3rd and the 4th have a long history of being tough slogs. And an incumbent can get in there and kind of win a little bit more comfortably as time goes on. But then those districts are always susceptible to a change election, an election like an Obama election, an election like, like a Trump. I guess 16 is a good example of that too, but they're susceptible to that. And it was foolish for Republicans to think, for Republican leadership to think that that was just going to be an easy fight, especially after the primary, what happened to their inevitable eventual nominee. There were, I just showed you one of them. Outrageous ads, outrageous attacks on Joe Kent, the amount of money they threw at him in a district that size. If you don't think double-digit tens of millions, thrown at a candidate damages a candidate in a district that size, you're crazy. You're crazy. You're wrong. You're flat out wrong. And then you're adding, right, Laura, these are Republicans doing it too. So you're adding to the social bias that Democrats have been throwing at these, especially suburban women, people like that. You're adding fuel to it when you're putting out stuff like that. It was incredibly stupid. They should have taken the L and helped the guy out. But they didn't. They did not. All right, real quick before we go into our reads, our break. Real quick. This day in history, we had the Greensboro protest. All right. And just to give you a little, let's do a little History Channel thing. All right. We'll do a little History Channel. I thought I had the history thing up. I had this History Channel thing up. That was really cool. But this is, of course, talking about the sit-in. Here it is. Greensboro sit-in. Facts, date, and fiction. All right. It was a civil rights protest started in 1960 when young African-American students staged a sit-in at a segregated Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. And the History Channel is constantly throwing ads at me. They refused to leave after being denied service. The sit-in movement soon spread to college towns throughout the South. Though many of the protesters were arrested for trespassing, disorderly conduct, or disturbing the peace, their actions made an immediate and lasting impact, forcing Woolworths and other establishments to change their segregationist policies. All right. And that is the Greensboro 4 right there. If I recall, right, they are referred to as the Greensboro 4. Sadly, there is another side to this. Yes, we should all remember these actions, and we should, celebrate the civil rights movement without a doubt. But we should also recognize that we have suffered and continue to suffer from a generation who was left, I want to say, after the death of, I want to put it like this. After the assassinations, they're not deaths. after the federal government killed Martin Luther King and probably Malcolm X, all right, a lot of these people were left with, directionless, leaderless, and you had these people that didn't do us a very good service. Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and they made the business of those gentlemen, they turned it into a living and a grievance industry. And unfortunately, in a political party, one of our two dominant political parties saw political capital in this. And they now rely upon the perpetration, the self-perpetuating grift that is the victimology or the victimization movement. All right. So I don't think Martin Luther King would have wanted this to go on like in perpetuity. I think he would recognize the advances the society has made. But these gentlemen were coattail riders. Some of them ran for Congress. One of them, who's now passed, refused to go to Trump's inauguration, called him a traitor. Said he won 2016 illegitimately. He would not have been a congressman if not for what is really a grift. I really do believe that. Yes, I absolutely really believe it. These people can't allow Black America beyond a certain point. They can't. They'd be jobless. There would be no point for them anymore. Their existence would be irrelevant. And they sure hell wouldn't be able to get all those fancy donations. I mean, all those wonderful donations that fund their fancy lifestyle, while their community is intentionally held back. See, the worst thing, and Jimmy Dore says this all the time, we're beyond the right and left thing. It's something I agree with him about 100%. We're beyond the right and left thing. This really is a they versus us thing now. That's where we are in history. And if you can't see that, then they're blinding you. They're using something, whether it's a fear you have, a hatred you have, or an ignorance you may have. If you still see it as a right versus left and not a they versus us, then what they're doing is working on you, and you need to revisit that, because we most definitely are in a they versus us phase in our history. And the worst possible thing for the they out there would be for for these little groups that are told to hate each other to come together and realize that they are the actual problem, that they are intentionally doing this to us. Instead, they have you hating on the other guy. Sad, frankly. All right, let's do some reads, and when we come back, we are going to talk about Hamilton 68. The latest Twitter file drop from Matt Taibbi did a great job. Has a funny video, very short. We're going to run it. But it's incredible to me how easily, it's not just Hamilton and 60. It's not Hamilton 68. There were others out there that were put forward as these like experts on, bot detection and experts on hacking detection. Have you ever read the president of CrowdStrike's actual testimony before the House Intelligence Committee during the investigation that was led under Nunes? It is an absolute joke. You don't have to be a computer whiz to know that it's impossible for WikiLeaks to have obtained that content from the DNC server through a hacker from Russia who screenshotted it. The original attachments are connected to the email files. You can't screenshot an attached document. God. All right. It's just unbelievable crap. And yet again, keeping up with our thing here, and yet again, there are people who, no matter what, they're forever going to believe this. Anyway, we were just talking with Joe Kent about the economic danger that we absolutely could see policymakers put us in with this escalation in Eastern Europe. Of course, there are a lot of other problems: drought, inflation, other weather events, and yes, even government policies that are all pushing America's food supply to its breaking point. And that's why survival food is more important than ever. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits, just like Laura and I have done for our family. It's not ordinary food. We're talking good for 25 years, super survival food, hand-packed in a family-owned facility in the US of A. The kits are compact. They're very sturdy, water-resistant, light-resistant. They stack very easily, folks. You can stuff them right in a closet. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners, and you can make them in less than 20 minutes. You just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP for the People's Pundit to get your 3-month survival kit. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus 10 free gifts and free shipping. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Just go to 4patriots.com/TPP to build your own stockpile today. If you have already gotten the 3-month survival kit using the People's Pundit deal, if you're on their website and you're checking out all their other cool products, you can use promo code TPP10 at checkout to get an additional 10% off your other items outside of the 3-month survival kit. Again, I always tell you the best advice I possibly can. The 10 free gifts you get with the 3-month survival kit from the People's Pundit deal are useful gifts. So you may want to see, all right, so instead of, for instance, going into the website and just, using the promo code to get 10% off, like the solar water purifier or something, you very well may get that as a free gift. Right, Laura? A lighter, a solar lighter or something like that. That may come. We got a bunch of stuff, and we got a couple of kits too, so I don't remember exactly which one came with what, but it's worth checking out what you get as a free gift, because you may buy something off the website that you get, and then you'll have 2, and you might not have needed it. But that's my advice. If you checked it out, I'd love to hear if you've gotten the 3-month kit. I'd love to hear what you guys got for your free gifts. Actually, if you pop them in the comments, that'd be interesting for me to see it changes. It rotates. And not everyone will get, well, I suppose it's possible. Everyone, that 2 buyers get the same gifts, but it does rotate. And even when we got ours, we got different gifts for each thing, but useful, all useful, even down to the digital stuff that you'll get, like a digital handbook that had a lot of good information on it. The seeds are awesome. I'll tell you, with the weather, I don't know whether or not to start on certain crops and products yet. I don't know. Even with my lawn, one day it wants to be, 65, 70 degrees and there's no frost. And during the night, it's like 55. And then the next day it drops down to 20 again. It's all over the place. So I think I'm going to hang tight and I'm just going to wait, but again, TPP10 at checkout. All right. Let's see. Yeah, I'm afraid if I don't do the other one now, we won't have time throughout the video. But we shall see. You know what? We'll do one. We'll do one more, and then we'll save the other one for it. All right, let's do that. Yeah, I like that idea. I'm liking that idea. All right, actually, I'm going to leave this up. I want to show you guys. If you can get to this when you go and you fill this out and you get your free kit from GOLDCO, if you reach them before they call you, today it's a Ronald Reagan coin. I think ours was something else. It was a Trump coin, actually. I could be wrong. But anyway, if you call them before they call you, when you do your transaction, you'll actually get that, which is really, really cool. We talked about all this economic stuff. Last time this happened, we were talking about the petrodollar with Joe. This is no joke. The bottom is limitless. All right, but Saudi Arabia, they're looking at precious metals, all this other stuff. There's a reason. Last time we had economic uncertainty like this, The bottom dropped out. The dollar lost 46% of its value. The price of oil quadrupled. And yet, while inflation ran through the roof and the economy collapsed, the price of gold went up 1,300%. Silver, 2,400%. So if history repeats itself, and we know that it could, we could see this all happen again. You don't want to miss out on what could be the biggest gold and silver boom of our generation. That's why I want you to go to tpplikesgold.com. That's tpplikesgold.com, because when you do, you'll not only get a chance to protect your retirement savings with gold and silver, you could get 10,000 or more in free silver just for doing it. It's a rare opportunity, so don't miss what could be the best opportunity to protect your retirement savings. That's tpplikesgold.com. tpplikesgold.com. And I'll tell you what, actually, like I say all the time, TPP really likes platinum right now a lot. But I also, which is a much more affordable investment, is silver. And that is they're going to tell you that. I'll tell you right now, when you call, they're going to tell you that themselves. That gold is not the best growth potential right now. Silver and platinum is the way to go. All right. Let's see. Let's pop up. Let's start. Do I want to start with this video, or do I want to start with the actual emails? And then I want to read something from Margot Cleveland at the Federalist, who I think ties in what all this means rather nice. Because if you go to Matt's Twitter feed, he's going to roll out some of these emails, and they're worth listening. They're worth reading, without a doubt. Let's see if I can get it up in one line of a thread here. Yeah, because I want to show you what some of the dashboards said. Okay, but this is a clip he's got right at the top of the thread because it sums it up. And then we're going to go over the thread, and when we do, we'll go to Margot, because this all very much ties into, again, our theme here of why people believe these things that aren't true. And then this is a great story that highlights the harlots, that highlights the cartel. What we mean when we say the cartel, or I say this is the information, part of the cartel, the media and the entertainment industry and big tech. This is the information part of the cartel. And they have a lot of power, even when they're liars. And then even now that this report is out, there will still be people who believed so-and-so was a Russian bot, or legit people were being targeted as Russian bots. And I'm telling you, Laura, you got to check that. I'm telling you, I was on that freaking Hamilton 68 thing. I was. So was Chris. And the only reason he did that, by the way, even mildly, because it wasn't hard to find out it was him, but even mildly, masked his identity or tried to on Twitter, had nothing to do with because he's a bot. It's because he works for a company that doesn't allow him to have his own views. And God forbid they see something tweeted, posted to Twitter or something that they don't agree with. He'll be targeted at work. He'll lose his job. That's where we're at. But these people came out and they claimed to be, all right, experts, and had this, methodology and algorithm that they never would, by the way, identify very much at all. And turns out they didn't even identify it to Twitter. Anyway, here's the video at thread on this thread. Tweet 1 has this. It's funny. It's short. It's only 14 seconds. Warning. Hold on. Warning. Okay. There is language in the video. Okay. I have to start doing that, and I have to remember. That's why Laura doesn't like it when I curse, actually, because you're supposed to disclose technically, especially if there's paid promotionals. So that's me attempting to say there's curse words in the video.
You and your team, you guys created a website, Hamilton 68.
Yes, my colleagues and I, we tracked Russian accounts.
That's some bullshit.
So there are Russian bots, according to your website, that are putting this out into the world. Is that correct?
It's bull.
That's funny stuff, Matt. Funny stuff. All right, so let's look at some of them. Let's look at some of the stuff he came up with here. And in the Twitter email, he says, and I think this is Joel. He says, I think we need to just call this out on the bullshit it is. Okay. And if you look at it here, Yoel Roth regarding Hamilton 68, The person he's sending it to, we don't know, but it says, yes, exactly. It's so weird and self-selecting, and they're so unwilling to be transparent and defend their selection that, quote, I think we need to just call this out on the bullshit it is. All right. Here we go. Keep going here. Here's another one. All right. Hey, so-and-so from, and again, this is Joel himself. Hey, so-and-so, unlike hashtag release the memo, this one is primarily being driven by data from Hamilton 68. I'll do another sweep for spam shortly, but as of yesterday, this looked like the right-leaning hashtag about the shutdown, which only got the label of Russian because the Hamilton dashboard falsely accuses a bunch of legitimate right-leaning accounts of being Russian bots. How we publicly push back on Hamilton is a bigger question. But I think there's anything there, but I don't think there's anything too noteworthy about this hashtag beyond that, Joel. And why does Joel feel that it might be tricky to push back on them? Because they were held up by media, they were held up by Democrats as a legitimate organization and a legitimate operation to identify Russian bots that spread misinformation. Plus Carlos. Hey, so-and-so. We produced an extensive description of these accounts during Project Offspray, available here. The findings were generally that these accounts are neither strongly Russian nor strongly bots. They're just generally right-leaning users. Virtually any conclusion drawn from it will take conversations in conservative circles on Twitter and accuse them of being Russian. And now, I may be an old man, but it wasn't that long ago. And I remember this. The impact from this damn dashboard, I remember it like crazy. I was constantly called a Russian bot, constantly getting flagged, constantly having my tweets investigated. And what were the tweets, by the way? Generally pushing back on the dossier claims and the fake news from the fake Russia hoax. The bot check people use a similarly flawed methodology. In terms of substance, this is truly a nothing burger. It's just a problem of journalists continuing to lean on deeply flawed tools pushed by people looking to capitalize on the bot media frenzy. But to try to allow us to get ahead of some of these Hamilton 68 nonsense, I'm working on our own internal version of it. You can view it here. DS colleagues, please feel free to add new things you may be interested in the dashboard. The Hamilton accounts are all in Presto. Interestingly, there are already some discrepancies between the hashtags they tout on their site and the ones we're seeing in our own data. Certain hashtags like hashtag Israel and hashtag Trump appear to be completely blacklisted from the Hamilton dashboard. These and other inconsistencies, coupled with the total lack of transparency from the GMF team about their methods, point to a major unmet opportunity to try to educate our comms and gov partners about the flaws with tools like Hamilton. Nick, son Black Redacted, should help advise us on that. I mean, this is maddening to me. This absolutely is maddening to me. Here's the Alliance for Securing Democracy. All right. Hamilton 68, a new tool to track Russian disinformation on Twitter. And as Talibi points out, these are quotes by Twitter executives about Hamilton 68, a digital dashboard that claimed to track Russian influence and was the source of hundreds, if not thousands, of mainstream print and TV news stories in the Trump years. Here's MSNBC. The dashboard was headed by former FBI counterintelligence official. And by the way, Clint Watts, right, is currently a contributor to MSNBC and was funded by a neoliberal think tank, the Alliance for Securing Democracy. You know, I got to wonder if any of these so-called DC Republicans were ever Republicans. Or did they just use the political success of the Bush era to advance their careers? Well, if you move from if you look at the 1970s to the early millennia, the first decade in the millennia, you would think that Republicans are very difficult to beat at the presidential level. You had 2 Reagan terms, followed by a single term, yes, because he was defeated for Ross Perot dynamic there. You absolutely have that in there. That matters. But Herbert Walker Bush, not only did he beat Dukakis, who was ahead in the polls at one point by like almost 20 points, he drummed Michael Dukakis. Drummed him. Over 400 electoral votes. And then you have Bill Clinton, yes, who does get 2 terms successfully back-to-back, never winning a majority. So if you're in the intel state, if you're a Fed, if you're Jim Comey, Robert Mueller, right? Clint Watts, Mike Rogers, by the way, and you just want to be smart, you might think back then that it was just wise to identify as a Republican, but you are damn sure not a Republican. I really believe that's what happened here. I really do. And Republicans, especially after Reagan, from Reagan to Bush, Republicans at that point were generally the vehicle for these people to advance. Anyone who served in the military, Joe, if you're still listening, you know what I'm saying is true. You don't fight, you don't get promoted that quick. Combat MOSs get promoted a lot faster. It's the same thing in the administrative state. If you're not on a footing where you're a field person, you're out there. So you want the party in power who's going to give you opportunities to do that. And during the neocon post-Reagan era to the George W. Bush era, that was the Republican Party. They're still carrying the stain of that right now. So none of these guys who went on, during the Trump era, he appointed Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller's a Republican, don't you know? This U.S. attorney, this guy who works at Maine Justice, that's a Republican, don't you know? Meanwhile, they're not Republicans, really. Jim Comey's a Republican. Did you know that, guys? Jim Comey's a longtime Republican. He only voted Democrat for the first time since George W. Bush. Colin Powell, the late left hook general himself. Was he ever really a Republican? As if it was still freaking noteworthy to point out that Powell wasn't going to vote for Trump. Powell hadn't voted Republican since George W. Bush embarrassed him at the United Nations. Can we get real clear here? And at the end of the day, General, and I hate talking bad about the dead. At the end of the day, you are your own man, right? He was his own man. Did Bush put a gun to his head and make him do that? Eventually, he could have resigned in protest. He didn't have to give the famous BS anthrax speech to the United Nations. I have in my hand a vial of anthrax. Remember that? And if you don't sign on to invade a country that has nothing to do with 9/11, this anthrax could find its way into your metro area. And all the while, the British and the United States are spying on these member nations Powell's trying to convince. So the guy votes for Obama in 2008. Can you blame him? He votes for Obama again. Even against Mitt Romney. It doesn't get more rhino than Romney. What I'm saying is, were these people ever really Republicans? I don't think so. I really don't think so. All right, so anyway, and the Alliance for Securing Democracy, the ASD Advisory Council, includes neocon writer Bill Kristol, former ambassador to Russia Michael McFaul. Another, by the way, did you know that's a Bush era Republican, Michael? Ex-Hillary for America chief John Podesta, and the former heads of deputy heads of the CIA, NSA, and the Department of Homeland Security. And in fact, let's take a look at that. Mike Chertoff's on this board. If his face looks familiar to you, that's probably because you saw him on Fox quite a bit as a spokesman. All right, and yeah, he just worked with FEMA. This is how they put it, by the way. Following Hurricane Katrina, Chertoff helped to transform FEMA, right, into an effective organization. Folks at FEMA, unless you didn't know this, if it wasn't for Mike Chertoff, you wouldn't be effective. And you only started to become effective after FEMA. Listen to them push David Kramer. All right. This is unbelievable because this dude, again, was at the State Department under George W. Bush, including an assistant secretary of state for democracy, human rights, and labor, deputy assistant secretary of state under Bush for European and Eurasia affairs, professional staff member in the secretary's office of policy planning. Dear God, no wonder why this country is in the position it's in. Alyssa Slotkin used her time in the administrative state as a talking point to get elected in Michigan. The woman was literally on every failed task force having to deal with Iraq. Every single assignment she had was a failure. William Kristol, is the editor-at-large of the influential political journal, The Weekly Standard. What happened to the Standard again? Before starting that magazine in 1995, Kristol served in government, first as chief of staff to Secretary of Education William Bennett during the Reagan administration, and then as chief of staff to Vice President Dan Quayle in the George Herbert Walker Bush administration. Kristol has also served on the board of the Project for the New American Century and the Foreign Policy Initiative. Before coming to Washington in 1985, Kristol taught government at the University of Pennsylvania and Harvard University. They forgot a very important thing there. William Kristol is also the son of the left-wing communist Irving Kristol. He's never been a Republican. In fact, hates limited government, believes in big government all across the board domestically, and in fact has so much faith in government that he's championed nation building that failed in Afghanistan and Iraq. Bill Kristol once told people on CNN that George W. Bush would not prosecute the war in Iraq like the one in Vietnam, and that the war would be over in 60 days. They forgot that part of the bio. These people were seriously held up. This was a legitimate dashboard. According to the media, the Washington Post, the New York Times, MSNBC, NBC, CNN, they were everywhere. Even Fox News entertained this dashboard. Outlets for years cited Watson Hamilton 68 when claiming Russian bots were amplifying an endless parade of social media causes against strikes in Syria was one of them. And I think actually that may be in support of Fox host Laura Ingraham, by the way, the campaigns of Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. I actually think my opposition to Syria may have actually ended up. That may be the case. One tiny corner of the U.S. government pushes back against Russian disinformation. Polygraph. You got to be kidding me. That's ABC News. NBC News, excuse me. The Washington Post. Russia-linked accounts are tweeting their support of embattled Fox News host Laura Ingraham. Amanda Erickson. Jesus. Save us. And here's Politico. The Russian bots are coming. This is Glasser, but Politico, as you may remember, Natasha Bertrand was given free rein to pump all sorts of disinformation, misinformation about Russia and Russia hoax. And Ukraine, by the way. The Russian bots are coming. This bipartisan duo is on it. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And notice how they push it. Bipartisan. You see what I'm saying? These people were never Republicans. They're not real Republicans. These are people who used that era to fuel their own careers. Bill Kristol never championed Ronald Reagan. Neither did his friend George Will. Neither did his late friend, Charles Krauthammer. Krauthammer hated Ronald Reagan. He hated him. The Mueller indictment, special edition. This is the Alliance to Secure Democracy or whatever, right? Mueller describes a sweeping, years-long, multi-million-dollar conspiracy by hundreds of Russians aimed at criticizing Hillary Clinton and supporting Senator Bernie Sanders and Trump, Bloomberg summarizes. When, of course, that's not really what the Mueller report said. That was not the headline from the Mueller report. The headline from the Mueller report was, yes, Russians meddled, but Trump had nothing to do with it. That was the headline from the Mueller report. Despite numerous attempts at entrapment. By the way, every time somebody even is honest enough to quote that one paragraph, just lays it out bare. Russia collusion never happened. They always leave out the words after the comma in that very key sentence, which describe numerous attempts to bait them into doing so. Solicitations trying to bait them into it by people, by the way, if you go through the report, by people we now know to have actually been involved in that scam. So it seems like the Don Jr. thing, that was an attempt to set Don Jr. up. The honeypots they sent after Papadopoulos and later Page, by the way. This is like an attempt to get them, to entrap them into something that they later were going to accuse them of doing, because it wasn't real, it wasn't organic, it wasn't actually happening. And every time somebody brings that up, they leave the rest of the sentence after that comma out. I believe People's Pundit Daily was one of the few organizations that highlighted that. Even when Bill Barr held his press conference and went to which was unprecedented, went to the core, which was the conclusion is there was no collusion. Even he left it out, despite numerous attempts, if memory serves me correctly. And then what do they say? This supports the findings of Clinton Watts, a senior fellow at the Alliance for Securing Democracy, who charted the timeline of Russian interference dating back to 2014. This is unbelievable. As the IRA trolls work to oppose all candidates except Sanders and Trump. Oh my God. This is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right, going on. Hamilton 68 was a source of stories claiming Russian bots push terms like deep state or hashtags like fire McMaster, Schumer shutdown, walkaway, released a memo, Alabama Senate race, and Parkland shooting, among others. What is so funny about this? One of them, at least, we know, at least, actual bots paid for by Democrats are involved in one of those hashtags. This is what goes to what Laura always says. If they're accusing you of something, it's something they're doing themselves. They're projecting their wrongdoing onto you. Right. It's that because she just said, and I know you guys can't hear through the other room, but they intimately know the ins and outs of the things they're accusing you of. So that's how they actually make it look convincing. She's 100% right. So here they're accusing Russian bots of trying to help Roy Moore, when in fact we know that the only bot operation was funded by Democrats to help Doug Jones. And as if there wasn't already a wealth of information to use to go after Roy, they were making stuff up out of whole cloth. I don't know, Fast Company, who really cares, but, there's a whole slew of left-wing rags out there. Fast Company's one of them. Hashtag fire McMaster, not more. Twitter bots thriving, and they're more lethal than ever. Lethal, Laura. Lethal. They use the word lethal. They're implying not only are these Twitter bots real, and here's the dashboard that shows you them, which is a fake dashboard. Not only are they real, Laura, they're lethal. They could kill you. Did you know that? The bot is going to jump out of the computer screen while you're sleeping and stab you with little Spetsnaz knives from Russia. These people are insane. These people are insane. They're dangerous. This kind of black art stuff, man, this is dangerous. Russian bots are using hashtag walkaway to try to wound Dems in the midterms. Really? Because I thought hashtag walkaway was Brendan Strzok or whatever, right? Come on, man. Like he needed bots to push his message? The guy was viral like crazy before they arrested him. Russia pushes more deep state hashtags. The term deep state has been around since at least the Nixon years. At least. Russian propagandists are pushing for Roy Moore to win. Mother Jones. In fact, was the exact opposite. The secret ingredient to Hamilton's 68 analytical method? A list. Our analysis has linked 600 Twitter accounts to Russian influence activities online, and was how the site put it at their launch. But they never released the list, claiming the Russians will simply shut down the accounts. All those reporters and TV personalities making claims about Russian bots never really knew what they were describing. So there you go, Laura. So here I'm, being called a Russian bot, and they never even put the list up, So they must have given, though, journalists, there must be emails where they told journalists these are Russian bots. They're doing it with Twitter. Twitter's able to go through them and flag the accounts. No doubt for these smear stories, they did the same. Hamilton State never put it out. All right, and here's something. This is great. All right, this is great. For what it's worth, Rosenberger and Fly disclosed their methodology on their website and say they can't reveal the list because it's simply shut them down. Other researchers with whom I've spoken with say the tweets and messages found by Hamilton 68 certainly are consistent with what they've seen from Russian linked accounts. This is it's just unbelievable they would make these claims. Rosenberger, who spent years in the Obama White House and State Department, laughs at the idea she's a neocon plant, though it is true that their advisory board contains both liberal Russian experts like former Obama advisor to Moscow, Michael McFaul, as well as other favorite Greenwald, bête noire, the original neocon, Bill Kristol. She scoffs at the idea she's a neocon. She's a neocon! Twitter executives were in unique position to recreate Hamilton's list, reverse engineering it from the site's request for Twitter data. Concerned about the deluge of Hamilton-based news stories, they did so, and what they found shocked them. And we may have to go over here because we got started a couple minutes late. I found their API key, which is a mysterious art I can't quite describe, and then looked at which user IDs they were passing as parameters to the user's time. Oh, that's how they got it. Okay. How did I miss that before? I missed that. And sorry for missing that. At long last, I've been able to reverse engineer the list of accounts behind the Hamilton 68 dashboard. The Securing Democracy people have never been willing to release the list to anyone. Here's the full list here. Is somebody willing to literally put that in their URL and see if that doc's there? You can't. It's not obviously not a link, but you could just type in every single one. I'm going to do it after the show. I want to see if that doc's still up. The dashboard includes 648 accounts as opposed to the 600 they claim. The selection of accounts is bizarre and seemingly quite arbitrary. They appear to strongly preference pro-Trump accounts, which they use to assert that Russia is expressing a preference for Trump, even though there's not good evidence that any of the accounts they selected are or are not actually Russian. Let's discuss strategy for how we want to use this information. I think it can help us refute a lot of the thinking in DC based around the dashboard. But in fact, none of that happened, right? None of that actually happened. In fact, they just shut the hell up. Anyway, these accounts they concluded are neither strongly Russian nor strongly bots. There's no evidence to support the statement that the dashboard is a finger on the pulse of Russian information ops, hardly illuminating a massive influence operation. And because we're running out, let's just scan some of this. So in layman terms, the Hamilton 68 barely had any Russians. In fact, apart from the few retweet accounts, it's mostly full of ordinary Americans, Canadians, and British. It was a scam. Instead of tracking how Russia influenced American attitudes, Hamilton 68 simply collected a handful of mostly real, mostly American accounts and described their organic conversations as Russia scheming. Twitter immediately recognized these Hamilton-driven news stories and that posed a major ethical problem, potentially implicating them. And now understand, that's the only reason why y'all gives a damn. Can we be real? Real people need to know they've been unilaterally labeled Russian stooges without evidence or recourse. No doubt Cernovich is on there because I saw this thing from Dave Rock, which I gave to him, by the way. Somebody gave it to me. And it was an outline of how they were going to deal with the Trump administration. And it outlined how they would do this, do this Russia craze that they put all over America. And they identified Cernovich and Jack Posobiec and a bunch of others as people they would say are Russian agents that are there to help Donald Trump. So Twitter execs badly wanted to out Hamilton 68 after Russians were blamed for hyping the hashtag Parkland shooting. One wrote, "Why can't we say we've investigated and citing Hamilton 68 is being wrong, irresponsible, and biased?" Yoel Roth wanted a confrontation. "My recommendation at this stage is an ultimatum. You release the list or we do," he wrote. However, there were internal concerns about taking on the politically connected Alliance for Securing Democracy. They bitched. And by the way, Ozzy's tweet, if you're an Ozzy fan, by the way, it's trending. I can tell you what's going on. He had those, 4 surgeries. He had to cancel his tours because he's not physically up to it. Sad. Eventually, we all have to face reality. I saw Ozzy many times. He was great. It was a great show. I saw him with Zach Wilde and Joe Holmes, who replaced Zach Wilde. Yoel Roth wanted a confrontation, right? So there he goes. But we have to be careful in how we push back on ASD publicly. Said, by the way, future White House and National Security Council spokesperson Emily Horn. It's unbelievable. The incestuous, Laura, the incestuous relations between big tech, the media, social media, big tech, politics, Wall Street, K Street. It's disgusting. And actually, I meant to ask Joe what he thinks needs to be done about this. Like, how would he address this if he was in Congress and could, introduce a bill? Because this is the cartel at work here. Emily Horn makes sure that nobody knows this is bull crap. And now she's been rewarded for it. I also have been very frustrated not calling out Hamilton 68 more publicly. But understand we have to play a longer game here, wrote Carlos. I don't want to butcher your last name, Carlos. Who's Carlos? The future senior advisor to now Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Or as Trump says, butt at edge. What does he say? I'll never forget the first time he said that. So, but anyway, I'm laughing, but it's not a laughing matter. It reeks of what you heard in the Pfizer video the other day. Why does it matter? Because these people want, it's more about advancement than it is about doing their job. And we have this problem with regulators in this country as well, whether it's, by the way, the FDA, the SEC. They loved Bernie Madoff. They were constantly worried about pissing off JP Morgan. And then look what Bernie was allowed to get away with. These other regulators at the FDA, maybe one day they want to go work for Pfizer. Maybe they want to lobby for Pfizer. Right? So the worst possible thing imaginable could happen. They don't do their damn job, and there's an unsafe substance in society. How else was Purdue Pharma allowed to get away for years with claiming that OxyContin really doesn't lead to drug addiction, and that the people that certain pharmacists and doctors were trying to use as examples, that's not addiction. There's a difference between drug-seeking behavior because of addiction and because of chemical dependence. And in fact, I could argue, I see, that now that we know, there is some truth in that, but ultimately that means it is an addiction. I mean, whether it's a mental addiction or a physical addiction, it doesn't matter. It's chemical dependence, yes, but they tried to pass that off as the reason for it. How would they be able to do that if the regulators were doing their jobs? But they're not. And here we see this happening now with big tech. I'm shocked. Or wait, actually, so the legitimate people, as one Twitter exec called them, never found out they'd been used as fodder for mountains of news stories about Russian influence because the Twitter files contain the list they've begun finding. Because the Twitter files contain the list, they've begun finding out. I'm shocked, says Sonia Mansour, who as a child lived through civil war in Lebanon. Supposedly in a free world, we are being watched at many levels by what we say online. And if anybody did do that, by the way, grab that list. Pop it over here, Laura, if you got it. If somebody put it up there. What state has the largest percentage of so-called registered Republicans crossing over and voting Democrat? That's a great question, Evan. That's a great question. I'm not sure. I mean, I have one in my mind right now. But there is... Yeah, that's a good question. There are a few in my head right now that I absolutely could probably cite, Arizona, Georgia, because a lot of people who voted by mail. That's a great question. We should look into that. Evan, I'm gonna make a segment about that. We're gonna do some research. We're gonna dig into that, and we're gonna look. Because you can't really just rely on the exit polls. You can't. All right, so I've written a book about the U.S. Constitution, says Chicago-based lawyer David Shestakos. How I made a list like this is incredible to me. Shestakos, is that how you say it? He's Greek, right? Unbelievable. The guy looks like a working dude from Fort Myers, Florida. Yeah, because it says Chicago-based, and it says Chicago here on his thing, but the latest Shestakos for Fort Myers, thanks to... Yeah, that picture in the background don't look like Fort Myers, though. But anyway, when I was growing up, my father told me about the McCarthyite blacklist, says Oregon native Jacob Levitch. As a child, it would never have occurred to me that this would come back in force and broadly in a way designed to undermine rights we hold dear. Folks, this is what is happening now. And what happened under the Trump administration is way worse than McCarthyism. Senator McCarthy was right. They're not even right. It's not even a legitimate fear. It's an irrational fear created by a hoax. It's fiction. When McCarthy said the State Department is crawling with commies, when McCarthy said Hollywood is crawling with commies, that these commies are going to get into our academic institutions and teach our children poison, he was right. His fear was not irrational. It was on point, right? Now, you can disagree with the tactics. You could disagree with that, but here you can't say it's as bad as... You can't say McCarthyism is somehow the standard for this. This is well beyond McCarthyism. Why? Because they aren't right. There's no truth here. Jacob Levitch isn't a Russian agent. He's not a Russian bot. Trump didn't collude with Putin. You understand what I'm saying? This isn't true. Ken Delanian doesn't have a source. He's an asset. Maggie Haberman knew she was lying to you about the funding of the dossier. This is way worse. Even Twitter execs were stunned to read who was on the list, wrote policy chief Nick Pickles about British comic Holborn Olds, a wind-up merchant. I follow him and wouldn't say he's pro-Russian. I can't even remember him tweeting about Russia. I'm listed as a foreign bot, said conservative media figure Dennis Michael Lynch. As a proud tax-paying citizen, charitable family man, and honest son of a U.S. Marine, I deserve better. We all do. If you don't know who Dennis Michael Lynch is, I don't know, you're under a rock maybe. He's hilarious. To think he's a bot is just crazy. The editor of Consortium, Joe Loria, too, was angered to find out he was on the list, which targeted voices across the spectrum. Organizations like Hamilton 68 are in business to enforce an official narrative, which means excising inconvenient facts, which they call misinformation. And by the way, I believe Joe follows me. He's not a bot. What makes this an important story is the sheer scale of the news footprint left by Hamilton 68's digital McCarthyism. And again, I got to take issue with this, folks. I have got to take issue with it. Because the fact of the matter is, and look at this. Wow. Look at this. But it can't be McCarthyism. Because of the central difference here. That Senator McCarthy actually had a rational fear. This isn't real. And no matter what, there will forever be people who think it is. That's the problem with these misinformation, disinformation campaigns. There's a difference. That's the problem with them, is that they leave a footprint. If you're using Matt's word, they leave that footprint. And that footprint leaves behind bull beliefs. Netflix. You watch a comedy special. Who's that Asian dude? He's hilarious. But Trump never said white supremacists were very fine people. That was a dangerous hoax. He'll forever believe it. And he'll use it in his stand-up routine. There's actually about disinformation. There is a series on Netflix right now. And they still, to this day, cite that police officers were killed by protesters on January 6th. I just heard it the other day. That's the problem with this stuff. The quantity of headlines and TV segments dwarfs the impact of individual fabulists like Jason Blair or Stephen Glass. And for people who don't know who he's talking about, Jason Blair was the New York Times. Stephen Glass was the New Republic, I believe. He literally took the magazine down. They fabricated stuff. Stephen Glass once said that he had this incredible story about conservatives at CPAC, young activists at CPAC, doing drugs and drinking and basically having an orgy like a gangbang. You know, it never happened. He just wanted to portray young conservatives as being, bad, acting bad, like they're hypocritical. Jason Blair, both of these men, simply created, and this is why Matt is at least starting to touch on why this matters. They created stuff out of whole cloth. And by the way, the guy who plays Anakin Skywalker and Jumper, he plays Stephen Glass he played him great in a movie called Broken Glass about that. He portrayed him amazingly. And it's amazing, truly, that these men could go through this for as long as they did without ever getting pushback. Eventually, both men just took it a little bit too far. But you have to ask yourself, how did these things get through the fact-checking departments? Even the New Republic had a fact-checking department. When Stephen Glass would go to write something, publish something, they would have, bring us your notes, Stephen, and we're going to, verify everything. Even a small website like People's Pundit Daily had a fact-checking process. They don't give a damn anymore. They just don't care anymore. So you see with like Stephen Glass, Jason Blair, there's always been some kind of flaw in the system, but it really just blows a hole in disinformation wide open when you have these organizations like these so-called, experts in their fields simply fabricating things like this. And the media not pushing back on it at all, which we're going to do read real quick. But when we do, I want to come back and just really quickly go over something Margot says, because Margot really makes the point that needs to be made, which is it was weaponized. This was part of a bigger scam. It was completely weaponized. All right, let's remove this. Let's get through the new guy here. New kid in town. The Eagles are trending, but I don't think it's them. Right? Anyway, like me, not Laura. She's doing better than me. I went and I know you know where I'm going with this. I just did this. It's funny that it says this because it's actually true. But I'm not as happy with my progress, and that's because I cheat sometimes. And Laura doesn't cheat. Not like I cheat anyway. She cheats. But she's doing better. She looks better than me right now. Like, as a very funny. Like, comparable, I mean. Like, she is a very attractive, woman. And I'm a little pissed at myself. So I went yesterday like, yes, I'm going to be at least 10 pounds. And it was not. Although it is typical that muscle weighs more than fat. It's true, Laura, that muscle weighs more than fat, and men have more muscle mass. So it's possible that I just replace those pounds. But the doctor, nevertheless, absolutely told me what I thought I was going to hear, which is that I'm healthier. I'm healthier than my last go. And, that's why I really wanted to do something about health, especially because I know my audience. And, something that is true, which is, the best defense against the pandemic was not being a fat, overweight, lazy society. Right? It's almost like they engineered that virus to take out Americans. The president at the time, his voters, right? And this is the best defense you could have been was just simply be healthy. As I have a vapor in my mouth, but you know what I mean. Anyway, you have leftover pandemic pounds, maybe leftover holiday pounds, which I obviously know that I do. But you're sick of all these fad things. They don't work. The new pill, the super beat, right? Whatever it may be. Been there, done that. Laura and I have tried them as well. We know your pain. We feel your pain. The simple truth is you need 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day to jumpstart your metabolism, to be healthy, to get what you need for your body to process things and operate at its potential. But maybe you don't like vegetables. Right? There's especially dark vegetables. All right. There's certain kinds, the greens that you really need. All right. And also, it's not practical to put 5 servings in your meal, in your diet every day. Right. Well, that's where Field of Greens comes in. All right. It is a science-backed formula, but look, you can tell you all the things in the world. But the bottom line is when you get to, Larry Schweikert had the list. Cool. All right, when you get to the doctor and the doctor says, wow, whatever you're doing, keep it up, that'll be all the proof you need. Field of Greens, I've read it. And actually, just to give you an idea, folks, all right, just assume that everything I say, the word organic is before it, okay? Parsley, kale, barley, grass, wheatgrass, spirulina, chlorella, green pepper, green apple, green banana, sweet potato, broccoli, on and on and on and on. It just goes on. That's the greens part. But there's actually the reds blend as well, which is all together in it. Beetroot, right? Which you always hear people talk. I didn't want to the next super beet. Beetroot, strawberry powder, raspberry powder, blueberry powder, tart cherry powder, pomegranate powder, cranberry. It just goes on and on. Ginger, licorice, this is the metabolic, green tea, turmeric, on and on and on. Very easy to consume. One small little scoop, put it in a water bottle, put it in a glass, put it in your favorite drink. Maybe you're a body armor person like me. But Laura's got me doing it in a higher water intake. So a sports drink bottle or something like that, filling it up. It's easy to get down. You will notice a difference immediately. But again, like I said, it will all become real clear to you when you do what I did yesterday, which was your next doctor visit. And the doctor says it's working, keep it up. Get started today with 15% off using the promo code TPP. That's it. TPP. Go to fieldofgreens.com. That's fieldofgreens.com and get started with there's regular, there's lemon lime, and then there's the berry flavor. Laura likes the berry. I personally like the lemon lime, and I know somebody who likes it just straight up because they use it in another drink and they don't want added flavoring. Get started. Go to fieldofgreens.com and use the code TPP. All right. And by the way, fieldofgreens.com is going to bring you to Brickhouse Nutrition, which you're looking at right there. Use the promo code TPP. Get started. You will know a difference. All experiences are different, but I noticed immediately, I noticed a difference. And my skin got better. So, I mean, that there's no doubt about it. You will recognize that, in fact, you do need that amount, especially as you get to be my age, which I'm not having a good time with. I'm not aging in a classy way. Right, Laura? Let's be real. I'm not coping well. Most people age with grace. I'm not aging with grace. Well, not most people, but you try, you aspire to. I, in fact, am not. I am doing it begrudgingly. I don't like it. It sucks. All right, so here she is. Go ahead.
You may not like it. You may be grudgingly going through it, but you look graceful doing it. That's all that matters.
Are you saying I'm aging well? Physically? Is that what you're saying?
I'm married to you, ain't I?
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. I really do. But I don't like it. You know that. Oh no, Larry's got the nickname list. That's what he's got. Larry's got the nickname list. You know how Larry calls Biden Rutabaga or whatever, Rutabaga, demented perv. He's got these lists.
Rutabaga.
He calls Fauci Dr. Fallacy. I'm not going to repeat some of these, but Mitch McConnell, Yertle, Bo Toxic, Nancy Pelosi. Some of this stuff is hilarious. But I've known this about Larry because I've known Larry for years. He has never called people that he doesn't like this their correct names. He's always been coming up with this. I remember, right, the mailman is what he calls John Kasich. I remember when he first started saying that. It just came up. It was very organic. He comes up with these names for people, Laura. The Hobbit, he calls Katie Hobbs. Kankles is what he used to call Hillary Clinton. Is that his name for her here? Kankles, yep. He calls Obama Zero. He's always called her Zero. Shreklet is Chelsea Clinton. Oh my God, that's funny stuff. Yeah, I meant the list I want to see the entire list. That Matt got from the Twitter files. I want to see the list that Yoel was looking at in full because I want to know. I got to tell you, I was called constantly a Russian bot. You're a Russian bot. We know you're a Russian bot now. EPRA. Court slaps down California's attempt to muzzle doctors who dissent from COVID groupthink. All right. But, okay, this is obviously the Federalist. So for those people who always track what news sources shows use, whether you use left-wing or right-wing more, go ahead. I'm just telling you. It's the Federalist. So mark me down for a right-wing source show now. Twitter, media, and Democrats are all guilty in the Hamilton 68 scandal. It's a 7-minute read. We're not going to do it. We're going to start off. She goes on to explain what it was. But again, we already did this. Virtually every major news organization in America is implicated, including NBC, CBS, ABC, PBS, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post. Mother Jones did at least 14 stories on this. PolitiFact and Snopes actually cited folks, actually cited Hamilton 68 as a source. And how many times do we have to do fact checkers or on serious segments? This is a pretty big one. It's a pretty big deal, don't you think? These people were actually citing them as a credible source in fact checks. Wait, though. This is not what I want to do here. That's part of the media. Because I think Margot really is getting to the heart of this. Twitter told reporters it had been monitoring closely since the release of the memos. Hashtag started trending late last week, and that the hashtag appears to be organically trending. All right, so this is a for instance of when this happened. But the bottom line is the media, obviously, we already dug into that with some of them. Let's get to the political impact because I don't need to repeat a lot of what we already did with Matt. Democrats who fan the flame of Russian interference, absolutely based on Hamilton 68, deserve to be criticized immensely here. Censure even. Censure. Representative Adam Schiff, Senators Dianne Feinstein, Richard Blumenthal, Sheldon Whitehouse, many others, not only pushed the unfounded claims that Russian bots were behind the trending hashtags, they also demanded that Twitter and other tech companies investigate and stop such supposed interference. And all the while, folks, all the while, actually using bot farms in elections, in special elections throughout that year. The Alabama Senate race, which they barely won, and Doug Jones got crushed by Tommy, because that was a fluke and we all know it. Bogus stories mixed in with truth, all being pushed by bots. While these people scream about bot interference in the Alabama Senate race, it's unbelievable. They relied solely on Hamilton 68 as a source and did so even though Twitter had refuted the claims. In fact, internal Twitter communications showed they tried to warn senator staffers that the Russian interference story didn't stand. It might be worth nudging Blumenthal's staffer that it could be in his boss's best interest not to go out there because it could come back to make him look silly, one email suggested. By the way, why the hell would they be trying to help Democrats anyway, right? This is in-kind campaign contribution violations. If we helped a candidate using our resources at Big Data Poll without charging them for free, believe me, we'd be indicted. Or we'd pay a fine. We'd pay it. That's usually what happens. But we'd get in trouble. It's a violation. It's called an in-kind campaign contribution. Big tech, big media, that's the real. And I get the Section 230 arguments. And that, you know what? Do what Tucker says. Go that route. Codify it. Go ahead. But the other side of this is simply enforcement. Admit that we have party media like we did in the pamphlet days of the colonies and the early republic. Admit you're not a legitimate news organization. You are a debater. You're arguing. And actually, no, they're not. It's not even, at least party media debated each other. And they would post pamphlets and publish pamphlets that were intelligent responses to critics and dissenters. That's not even what we have here today. What we have here today is just pure propaganda. Just crap made up out of whole cloth. Crap, nonsense. We tried to wave them off because we don't believe these are bots, said another. But Blumenthal and other Democrats continue to scream about the supposed Russian operations. And for that, they should be made to look silly. Margot's 100% right. Silly? They should be punished. Well, Twitter, I really just said that. That's going to be a meme. While Twitter did try to warn off the media and politicians, it also deserves an equal share in the blame for peddling the Russian bot hoax because it knew Hamilton 68 was BS. Right. At the end of the day, they didn't do anything. And at what point does an ethics question, a violation of ethics, right? At what point, when you're dealing with policy and public policy and elections and politics in general, if you have this kind of power, at what point do you become some kind of there's some kind of legal culpability here? You aided them in a scam, a hoax, a fraud. We should have a separate discussion. We read that, we know. And then we know what happened. But people should say, but rather than clearly and unequivocally refute Hamilton 68, Twitter merely made hints off the record, thereby allowing both the media and congressional Democrats to mislead the public about Russia's responsibility for various social media trends. And I don't know if you can hear my son. He hears daddy getting worked up. And he's like, screaming, yelling. He's at the point of emulating daddy. So yes, Hamilton 68 deserves censure, but so too do the corrupt media and Democrats who pushed the Russia bot hoax and the Twitter execs who stood by while they did. Exactly. My point. There has to be, folks, some measure of some kind of punishment here. There has to be. You can't be allowed to do this knowing full well it's BS and get away with it. Again, people will forever believe this because of this. That's never going away. What time we got? 2:15? Need more time. So anyway, Russian propagandists seized the Kavanaugh controversy to sow division online. Russia is attempting to influence the Mueller investigation. You got to be kidding. Democrats say, well, and then they'll, in that article, cite these so-called experts, these frauds. Bill Kristol should never be seen on television ever again. Never. And neither should Watts. And by the way, the news industry should not have all of these spooks and former spooks influencing their coverage the way they did. These stories raise fears in the population, and most insidious of all, were used to smear people like Tulsi Gabbard as foreign assets and drum up sympathy for political causes like Joe Biden's campaign. And anyone who criticizes it is a Russia asset, some kind of Russian agent. Russia's propaganda machine discovers 2020 Democratic candidate Tulsi Gabbard. It's freaking NBC News. Unbelievable. Boo Biden and boost Gabbard, the report finds. Trump supporters spread the majority of phony news on social media. That's bullcrap. No matter how many BS stories from right-wing outlets, like the Gateway Pundit has had some even I've criticized. No matter how many people visit the Gateway Pundit, it's never going to matter. Corporate big media is always going to be the major purveyor of disinformation and BS, and always has been. When Dan Rather goes on 60 Minutes and runs a report with his psychotic, communist, unstable protege, Marla, whatever her name is, Mary Mapes, and tells the country George Bush is lying about his service record, it does more damage than an alternative website could ever do. The Russia hoax led to a psychopath shooting Steve Scalise, gunning down his security detail, taking aim at Republican lawmakers practicing for a charity baseball game. Nothing Breitbart or Gateway Pundit or anybody is going to ever print is going to do as much damage as they have ever done. The David Duke crap in 16, you got to be kidding me. They push this. And that's, just by the way, Duke lacrosse. Hands up, don't shoot. We could go on forever. The Russia hoax was just the most brazen because it was very clearly an attempt to usurp a duly elected president, to overthrow, to wage a coup. But they've been doing it for years. They killed Richard Jewell. They killed him. They literally ran a hero into his grave. Along with their friends at the FBI. Why? Because he's a white conservative who lived with his mother. So he fit the FBI's profile. You got to be kidding me. It all started, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, it all started with a very ambitious, is the nicest word for that woman I could think of, Laura. A very ambitious journalist who was basically willing to do anything to get a story that could land her a new position at the New York Times. I want to get out of this dirty southern state and live in the Big Apple or the City of Angels. Maybe I can go work for the LA Times with this story. Maybe I'll get a job with the old gray lady. I'm moving on up in life. It was worth, I'm not going to say it. Unbelievable. Incredibly and ironically, these stories were also frequently used as evidence of the spread of fake news on sites like Twitter. Here's PolitiFact. This is what Margot was talking about. It was a lie. The illusion of Russian support was created by tracking people like Joe Lauria, Sony Mansour, and David Sistakis. Virtually every major American news organization cited these fake tales, even fact-checking sites like Snopes and PolitiFact. Russia's social media efforts in 2016 were not just false, but inflammatory. Oh, thank you, PolitiFact. By the way, Gateway Pundit is right about the source of PolitiFact's money, even though they've fact-checked themselves about that. The same institute that gives to Pew Research and others. Yes, the money does come from George Soros. Trolls, bots, useful idiots attack new committee aimed at exposing Russian propaganda campaigns. Useful idiots is a term that Democrats tried to seize. It was definitely used by Russians to describe leftists in America. And not Russians, Soviets. Dedicated to the cause of spreading communism. Until the world was, in fact, Engels and Marx's dream of a one socialist state. They would use terms, the Soviets would use terms like the term useful idiot to describe dumb leftists in media and academia and in Tinseltown, Hollywood, because they in fact don't like them. As Don Smith and I always used to say, you're not part of the club, even if you think you agree with them. They still have no use for you, and you will be lined up and shot with the rest of them with the rest of us when the time comes. But for now, you're just a useful idiot who pushes our ideology. Adam Schiff, in fact, was the king useful idiot during the Russia hoax because he gave Russia what they wanted, which was division, fracture. And they tried to co-opt that phrase like they co-opted the word collusion. They took that word from, and by the way, the right has long called people useful idiots on the left because they are, in fact, useful idiots. So they're trying to take it here like they took the word collusion. Collusion was referenced in our vernacular in media and political circles. It was first rose to the front of the line in our, it's even pop culture, to reference the incestuous relationship between the media and the Democratic Party. And when WikiLeaks came out, when Julian Assange published the DNC emails, there was evidence of collusion. You could find 3 articles probably on People's Pundit Daily alone referencing WikiLeaks and talking about the collusion. Democrats colluded. The media colludes with Democrats. And then after 2016, when they moved full speed ahead with the fake Russia hoax in an attempt to once again seize the information highway for themselves, they co-opted the term collusion to reference Trump and this non-existent effort to work together with Russian President Vladimir Putin and his allies to steal the election from Hillary Clinton. Crazy, man. It's nuts. They do it for the same reason we talked about why they redo classics, movies, books, whatever, and make it the woke version, because you have to co-opt the story and change the story, change the meaning of words in order to implement your new way of life, your new thing. So there is the end of that. We're going to leave that alone. There's just so much to go on. Friday, we're going to go over the questionnaire for the public polling project. I know that it isn't, there's probably hardly anything raised in that thing itself, but in fact, I just saw somebody actually did do it. Is this the right form on here? It may not be the right form, but I have seen people contributing to the other one. It's probably because it's on the front page still. But yeah, we'll go over some of it because we do have some on there. That is, what's it called? funded from other projects that need to be moved forward. So I really want to get started on this. Yeah. You're talking about the stroke. Yeah, they killed Richard Jewell. His own lawyer will tell you they killed Richard. Both his lawyers will tell you. The one who defended him from the FBI when they went after their witch hunt against him and protected him from the crazy media, to the people who worked with him later to sue. All right, they'll tell you they fake news killed Richard Jewell. Poor guy. He just wasn't ready for it. He just what nobody is. Nobody's ready to be smeared by the machine like this. That's why it really is quite something how much the Trumps have taken. It really is, folks. If Mitt Romney had won the presidency and had been subjected to what Donald Trump was subjected to by these frauds, by Hamilton 68, Bill Kristol, the rest of them, and all these scumbag, dirtbag, fake journalists, all backed by the power of the administrative state who they have these relationships with that they should never have, these inappropriate relationships where, again, they're not sources. The journalists are assets. There's a difference. Anyone else would have been subjected to that. They would have resigned. They would have just said, you know what? The hell with this. I don't need this crap. I'm out. I'm going back to the golf course, or I'm taking my private plane to some third world country where you can't get your hands on me because I'm out of here. Yeah, so Romney would have been sucking his thumb like a little baby under the Resolute desk. Call for a press conference. I quit. But never would happen to him because he's a crook, right? So therein lies the problem. So the cartel would have never have went after him because he's a crook, and he never would have done anything he campaigned on anyway unless it was good for Wall Street, his friends at Bain Capital, and the like. One step outside of the circle, and you get it. He would never have stepped out of that circle. Absolutely right. All right, so with that in mind, man, yeah. Oh, I was just looking at some of your comments. They're gonna full court press the 2024 candidate. Absolutely. It's just that, the difference is, will they actually go to persecution is par for the course. Prosecution is another one. It depends. Like, they're not going to go after Nikki Haley with the FBI. She's one of them. And so, yeah, but I would expect to see just the worst kind of election coverage. Look at what they did in 2022. My God. Now it'll be a presidential election. It'll be even worse. Again, I hate this stuff. And then again, what the problem is with these hoax campaigns that we saw is that it leaves the footprint, and the footprint is generational, and some of them never go away. There are always going to be people who believe Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin. There are always going to be people who believe that, those players, the Duke lacrosse scandal, that poor girl, Tawana Brawley, was raped by those white kids. They're always going to believe that. They're always going to believe Michael Brown had his hands up and said, don't shoot, instead of the truth, which is that he tried to take a firearm while he was assaulting Officer Darren Wilson, who, by the way, his career is ruined. Had a baby on the way. He'll never be a cop again. And yet, that's not what people will remember. These ignoramuses are going to forever use that freaking saying, hands up, don't shoot. You're going to hear it forever as if it's real. It's not real. It never happened. Even if you strapped people in a chair and made them watch this video, and we went over the report by Eric Holder, a black attorney general, okay? Even if we went over the grand jury witness testimony from African American witnesses, they'll never believe you because the lie is there, and they can't bring themselves to confront that sad truth. All right. I think it's about time Laura and I get some lunch. What do you think, sweetheart? You think what? I missed somebody? Oh, why is Nikki Haley running? I mean, oh, Queen Bee's drinking the berry one. Nice. Berry, fieldofgreens.com. Again, thank you to all our sponsors. Brickhouse is our newest one. Fieldofgreens.com. Queen Bee, it's easy to get down, isn't it? I don't know how long you've been drinking it, but without a doubt, I feel better. I do. I even feel like, look, here's a dirty little secret. I like scotch. I like scotch a lot. All right. But especially as I get older, I realize I really can't drink that much of it. It dehydrates the hell out of me. For Christmas, Laura got me rocks that you put in the scotch. They're literally rocks, scotch rocks, whiskey rocks. And you freeze them, and then you put them in your glass. It's better than ice because it doesn't water down the scotch. So if you're having a glass of Glenmorangie, you absolutely don't want water to dilute your scotch unless you're a scotch and water guy, which I'm not. I like the taste of the scotch. If I don't take Field of Greens, if I don't drink my thing of Field of Greens for the day, I forget everything. I forget medicine. If you don't do it, and I don't do it, and then I have a glass of scotch that night, I'm like immediately dehydrated, right? And I feel like the swelling of a man who's over the age of 40, like fingers, whatever. If I do, it's like, oh, I drink Field of Greens so I can drink more scotch. No, it's just that I can feel the difference. My body tolerates it more and better, So hopefully you're enjoying it, but also having the benefits of it. How long has she been drinking it? 2 days? I noticed like energy right away, but over the course of days, look how clear yeah, an allergic reaction to something. But other than that, like I feel like my skin looks clear, is clear. It's amazing. It really is. It's something. I definitely feel the difference. So thanks for Field of Greens for signing on. Thanks for all of you who are supporting them. And as well as our other sponsors, 4 Patriots. Again, Laura, you can throw that stuff. Yep. For Field of Greens, use the promo code TPP. That'll get you started with 15% off your offer. Field of Greens, promo code TPP. And also 4 Patriots, the folks at 4 Patriots, the OGs, right? That's 4patriots.com/TPP. And that will bring you to the People's Pundit 3-month survival kit offer. And then, of course, on their website, thank you, Laura, you're on it. On the website, TPP10 at checkout. But see what you get with those. If you're going to get that 3-month kit, see what you get with the free gifts. And then use the promo code TPP10 on their website for any other great product that they have that you didn't get. Because I would have, right, Laura? I would have had multiple, doubles, because I was going to buy some stuff I wound up getting for free with the 3 kit. And then, of course, the folks at GOLDCO, call them. They will listen, and they will make the recommendation that's appropriate for you. All right. TPP likes silver and platinum right now, but the website is tpplikesgold.com. tpplikesgold.com. When you go to fill out the kit thing, call them before they call you, and once you open an account, you will get even more for free. Right. So there's legit fantastic offer. I have never heard of anything like that before. Spend this much, get this much silver for free. Like, not that much. There are always deals, and everyone will be different based on the amount. But what they got going at GOLDCO right now is an incredible opportunity. So check it out. Again, don't forget to subscribe to the People's Pundit channel on Rumble and on YouTube. Definitely on Rumble. And hit the thumbs up if you like the video. And the best place, of course, to go follow us, folks, is on Locals. That is the home base, peoplespundit.locals.com. Locals, I'm going to put up the questionnaire real soon. I'd like your feedback on it. I tried to incorporate generally everyone's idea with the new culture war stuff. And I really like the idea of how do you believe that what you see on TV and in the media and the entertainment industry, do you feel it reflects your values, attacks your values, or is trying to promote? I like that concept a lot. So I've been working with that. And then so many of the other great examples that we had. Really good suggestions. So keep your eye on that, Locals. It's coming. All right. All right, join the revolution at peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, we're out. Noon Friday, freewheeling Friday, and we'll have your question. We'll have the Q&A. Thank you to our guest Joe Kent for coming by again. We hope you stop by soon again, Joe. Great guest as always. Always smart guy, especially with the issues that we're dealing with right now. You just don't get. It's like some people are for the time, is what I'm trying to say. And Joe Kent is definitely a guy who understands where we're at in this time and what is at stake. So he said, I asked him, why would you do it again, Joe? And he's like, I just feel like I don't even have a choice. We're in trouble. And that's not the motivation behind so many people who are serving in Congress today. And that's a shame. Tragedy. And Republicans will need to get Joe Kent elected in Washington 3 because they're going to lose a bunch of seats in California. That's going to happen in 2024. Republicans won seats purely because turnout was really low, way low, and white turnout was high. So when Hispanics and other minorities vote in the presidential cycle, they're going to get their ass kicked. So that's why, by the way, David Giglio, for instance, was trying to win over Hispanic precincts, not win based on old white primary voters, because there is no future in a district like that. Come next cycle, I think Mike Garcia's probably is in one of the better positions, but Valadeo is in deep trouble. He should probably have lost that one. Valadeo's in deep trouble. Duarte is an L. Right now, he's a loser. He's going to lose, without a doubt, because he's not going to get that much of the Hispanic vote. Not the way he played it. It's not going to happen. So you'll need, if you're the Republican leadership, you're going to need to offset those seats. And by the way, there'll be a bunch of seats in the Northeast that are going to be very competitive. You failed to get back Virginia 2. Virginia 7, excuse me. You did not beat Wexton in 10. You did not get Michigan 3 because you wouldn't help John Gibbs, like Joe Kent brought up before. If you don't get rid of the vendors that were your team and then hire their vendors who suck. Barnes is so right about this. One of the biggest problems Republicans have simply is that they hire losers. Losers are in the clique, like proven losers. Their consultants are not good at all. They got some good ad cutters, good storytellers for ads, but their pollsters suck. They're horrible. Their advisors blow. They're not good. All right. So, that's got to change. Anyway, again, Joe Kent, Sue, I think I'm probably going to do that one tomorrow. What you just said, I think I'm going to do that tomorrow. I would have done it last Thursday if it wasn't for something that came up. But either we have to throw, Tuesdays and Thursdays on locals. This is what I'm thinking. I'm just going to tell you. There's no what are the odds right now. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm thinking inside the numbers. Because we need more. There's not enough time. And Tuesdays and Thursdays, locals live. That's what I'm thinking right now. That's the direction I'm leaning in. But there has to be an expansion of the times for inside the numbers. There has to be. There's just not enough time. And when I want to jump on live or something on locals, I just do it. There's plenty of yeah, and that's a good see. This is what I mean. There's too much content for the time. I would love to get right in right now about how Spanberger should have won, and that being it was a bellwether. Wexton underperformed, but that absolutely should have been assigned to us, which is something, I don't know if you guys saw me on the Daily Wire election coverage, but that was the first time I threw cold water on everyone. They were like celebrating while I'm in the green room waiting to go on. And I'm looking at it and I'm trying to be realistic. And I'm trying to say, look, yeah, Wexton is in deep trouble and that's a bad sign. But Spanberger is hanging on. And that's the competitive part of America. And that should be cause for concern. But they were just so happy about DeSantis and Republicans winning so much in Florida. I mean, again, people should have seen Florida coming for a long, long time. Laura and I and many, many, many others worked very hard for Florida. All right. There was a demographic opportunity there, and Republicans seized it. So Florida absolutely, at one point, could start voting to the right of some states. You would be shocked to think that's going to happen. Texas, even some of the plain states. Kid you not. And so we'll just see. All right. So, yeah, with that in mind, I guess that's it. That's a wrap. We'll see you at noon. All right. Noon Eastern Standard Time for Inside the Numbers. And keep your eyes peeled, local. All right. All the best, folks. Deuces. Bad Laura. Deuces. See you guys. Thanks for watching. Links in the description.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette.